Welcome to Catch the Vision, where we have real conversations that help people, even like myself, right, see themselves differently, think differently, and ultimately show up differently in their lives. Today's episode centers on something that I believe affects all of us, but it isn't always talked about, at least right away. We're going to be talking about confidence. We're going to talk about self-worth and how we truly, really, and truly see ourselves. Have you ever looked in the mirror or walked into a room and questioned whether you were good enough? And it's not because of, maybe what you have accomplished, but because of how you felt about yourself. Today's guest has built her message around helping people navigate the exact space. She's the author of the highly acclaimed book, Body Esteem, and her work goes beyond surface level confidence. It speaks to, I'm going to say, identity, self-perception, and reclaiming how you should see yourself. So this conversation today is more about transformation from inside out. And so Susan Walker, welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're going to be big buddies. We've been chatting away, and I've really enjoyed it, our conversation.
Look, I almost feel like we go back to red light, green light. Susan, if you would start us off, I want to ground this in a conversation with clarity, because your message, Susan, is not only powerful, but I wanted to, make sure that the people fully understand it. So let's talk about, what does body esteem truly means to you, and not just what it means to you, but beyond the title that you wrote.
Sure. I think with body esteem, the definition is really just having body positivity, your overall appearance, but also the individual parts like your stomach, your hips, your thighs. When I wrote the book, I think what inspired me so much to write it, Kevin, is my husband and I have birthdays back to back, July the 23rd and the 24th.
How ironic is that?
I know, isn't that ironic?
Right.
And he does something outrageous. He loves adventure sports. So on one birthday, he decides to jump out of an airplane, and I decide to play it close. I consider myself somewhat of a connoisseur when it comes to massages, especially a Swedish massage. And on this occasion, I went for my massage, went back to the room, and the masseuse said to me, if I don't drape your body properly, don't worry, because I'm blind. I can't see you. And I said, oh. And as we began to establish rapport, she said, actually, most of my clients feel better about having a massage, given the fact that I'm blind and cannot see their bodies. That got me thinking, Kevin. I thought, I've worked in this business treating eating disorders, emotional eating, stress, depression, anxiety, but there are still many of us out there that have feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem when it comes to our body image. So in writing my book, I wanted to help people overcome their shame and guilt. I shared with you when we were chatting that there's a study that was done in Australia with girls and women, and they reported when they consumed a simple carbohydrate like a cupcake or a cookie or an ice cream cone, they experienced extreme shame and guilt. I want people to learn to eat healthfully and normalize their eating without shame and guilt. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. If I'm going to have my favorite ice cream, which is mint chocolate chip, it's not going to be a guilty pleasure. It's just going to be pleasurable. In writing the book, Kevin, I came up with 4 things that I think improve your body esteem quotient. I designed this for my book. The first one is nutrition quotient, and I had dietitians help collaborate and write that chapter along with me. And in that chapter, I also help people understand there are a lot of myths and misunderstandings about nutrition, and we tend to do a number on ourselves when it comes to nutrition. We tend to put ourselves down if we're not eating perfectly, or we're not eating what we think we need to be consuming. When I think of nutrition quotient, most people report they feel deprived if they go without their favorite foods. So if you said to me, Susan, no more mint chocolate chip ice creams for a year, I would really crave it. I'd feel deprived. When I got my hands on, I'd probably overindulge. So I encourage people to enjoy their food without shame and guilt. There's a recent study that just came out a few weeks ago on ice cream. And since I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream.
Right,
It's my
right,
favorite dessert.
Right.
I really believe that this study is really profound. It says you can have 2 servings of ice cream per week, and it actually helps with heart health and your physical health. So since I already love my ice cream, unless you have a food allergy, severe issues with type 2 diabetes or diabetes, but even with that, you can have some moderation with sugar. So when I think about nutrition quotient, I think about normalizing your food intake without guilt or shame. The second quotient to the body esteem quotient that I discuss in my book is exercise. And when it comes to exercise, we know from the research that's been done at Cooper Aerobic Center at Cooper Institute that exercise not only decreases symptoms of depression, anxiety, stress, it improves symptoms of ADD, ADHD. It also helps improve our overall body image. So exercise is something that's really, really important to extend your lifespan and the longevity of your life and the quality of your life. The third one that I bring up is psychology quotient. And you've probably heard all the rave right now is talking about narcissism. And I've done a deep dive into the research. And if you're in a relationship with someone who is a narcissist, whether they have malignant narcissism, they have overt or covert, typically the person in a relationship with them is being lied to, manipulated, gaslit. They receive constant criticism. They're very envious and jealous of their partners. The studies are showing if you're in a relationship that's toxic, where someone is controlling you and dominating you, and you feel powerless of the situation, over time, you will really struggle with depression, anxiety, stress, and typically with body image issues. It's really hard to have a healthy, good psychological and health when you're struggling in a relationship where you feel controlled or dominated. The fourth one that's part of the body esteem quotient is fashion. And I tend to be a fashionista. I love fashion. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the series Love Story with John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. If you know, they were back in the 90s, and fortunately they both passed away. But in my book, I use Carolyn Bessette Kennedy as a fashion icon. Although she never met her mother-in-law, who was Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, she also was a fashion icon. It's okay to get our inspiration from other people, the way they dress, but I encourage my patients and my friends and loved one, design your own type of fashion. Be individual, have some autonomy, monogram your handbag, put an interesting scarf around your neck, but don't dress like everyone else. Establish autonomy. You will also learn from my book how to be your own stylist and how to be the curator of your closet. So when you walk in, everything in your closet fits you in that time and moment, and you feel fabulous when you get dressed. So those are the 4 components that I developed for body esteem quotient.
Susan, I think it was number 3 that has to do with the narcissism, right? Okay, so I didn't know. So there's malignant narcissism, there's overt, and then what else?
Covert.
So what are the difference between the 3?
Malignant narcissist is very dangerous.
Really?
Yes. They're willing to harm you. And in some cases, if you file for a divorce with a malignant narcissist, studies show they will come back and either kill you and the children, then do a murder-suicide, then take their life.
Okay, so
they're extreme.
Hold on 1 second. I don't know if you read this or not, but the killings that happened in Shreveport, Louisiana, did you see that?
I did see that.
Would that be someone that's malignant?
Potentially, not knowing the details,
Okay.
individuals, but there are cases like that where they just go ballistic and go on a killing rage. But if you think you're in a relationship with a malignant narcissist, they derive enormous pleasure from doing a psychological warfare on you, trying to manipulate you. They get enjoyment out of that.
Really?
Yes. And many of them are bullies, Kevin. And this shocked me when I was doing the research for my book. Most bullies have a brain abnormality. In other words, they get a kick, just like a psychopath gets a kick out of killing others. They have no shame or guilt or remorse about that. With malignant narcissism, they too derive pleasure from hurting other people, whether it's financially, psychologically, or going to the extreme and harming them.
Overt, what is that?
Overt is actually my father, who's now deceased. He wasn't an overt narcissist, he was more covert. With overt, they're usually the center of attention. They demand the room. They get really upset if someone else is getting all the attention. They will sometimes sabotage a social situation because they're not the center of attention. They're grandiose in their style. They're usually loud, very boisterous. And a lot of women are drawn to overt narcissists because they can be the life of the party. They can be great fun. On the other,
now, Susan, I used to be a baby overt narcissist. Because I'm listening to some of the characteristics, and when I was like younger, that was me. Like I would bust out laughing out loud because I want the attention. Yeah, wow,
But that's different, Kevin. I've talked to you for a good 30 or 45 minutes.
Oh, so you would have picked.
Yeah, I would have picked up on it. You are not a narcissist. In fact, Kevin, the people that say, "Do you think I'm a narcissist?" They're usually the ones that's not. The ones that say, "No way, I'm not a narcissist." They don't go to treatment or therapy. If they do, it's short term. They're in and out. So definitely, you're not a narcissist.
Okay.
You were probably a young child that was evolving and growing up and wanted some attention. And if you got the giggles, you got a kick out of that. But it sounds like you evolved, you matured, and that's no longer an issue. With narcissism, they don't change. And I'm the eternal optimist in terms of having hope for people to make changes. But I think you have to be really well informed that they're not going to make changes and you can't try to change them because they don't think anything is wrong. On the other hand, the covert that I mentioned, they are pretty subtle. It's kind of under the radar. They play the victim a lot to get attention. They will start drama and then they'll walk away and say, "You're the villain and poor me, I'm the victim here." And so it's more insidious. It's more sneaky behavior that you don't always pick up on just right away. Oftentimes they have extreme jealousy of other people. And so theirs, again, is more subtle. I hope that clarifies.
That was good. I mean, I didn't even, I just thought a narcissist is a narcissist, right? I didn't know there was levels to it.
Well, you know, Kevin, you're bringing up a really brilliant idea and point. When I was in graduate school 40-something years ago, all we knew was the grandiose narcissist. We just called it narcissistic personality disorder.
Right.
There weren't the different types, like the malignant, the overt, the covert. It's not until the last, I would say, 8 or 10 years that there's been more research done.
Okay.
And that's probably why you haven't heard a lot about it unless you're in the field like I am.
So there is a client of ours. She traveled here to Dallas from Phoenix. She wrote a book called Finding My Peace in the Storm. She was married to a narcissist for 33 years.
Wow.
And some of the stories that she was sharing,
Like mine.
I'm like, golly. So I'm like, was he malignant, covert, overt?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he was, I mean, that's a long time.
That's a long time, Kevin. And you know what breaks my heart? You know, you've probably heard of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
There's also one known as complex post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And complex is usually what a victim of narcissistic behavior has. And her being married to someone for 33 years and enduring that type of emotional abuse, and sometimes it's physical as well, it does a number on your psychological health.
Susan, so these are the things that you mentioned that I remember her saying: depression, weight gain, but she even was drinking a lot. And she even mentioned that there was times she felt like she wanted to kill herself.
Having suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
And she was probably drinking, Kevin, to sedate some of that depression and anxiety and her fears. And it is somewhat common for a victim of narcissistic abuse to reach for alcohol to sedate their pain. Sometimes they don't know what they're doing, but it's like, I can check out for a few hours. If I become intoxicated, I don't have to dwell on or think about it. So that's a pretty common way to cope with it that's maladaptive and unhealthy.
Wow.
It's very sad. It breaks my heart.
Susan, can you take us back to a time maybe where, you know, you may not have the confidence or you know, feel like you didn't have the self-image that you wanted? Like, were you ever challenged?
Absolutely. When I was 14 years old, I was diagnosed with endometriosis, which is a disease of the reproductive system. And in some cases, women and girls have no pain. Unfortunately, in my case, I have chronic debilitating pain. By age 20, they did corrective surgery. And then by age 21, they did a hysterectomy. And they wanted to save my ovaries because they didn't want me to go on hormone replacement therapy at such a young age. However, at age 23, my ovaries ruptured in the middle of the night and I had to have emergency surgery. Since then, I've had a total of 8 surgeries. They found at age 58 that the endometriosis was still there. They were kind of shocked by it because they thought if you remove the whole reproductive system, it wouldn't come back. What happened during those times, Kevin, especially in my 50s, my organs twisted due to the scar tissue and the endometriosis. So my tummy was so extended, I looked like I was 6 to 9 months pregnant. And I remember on 2 different occasions going to do my grocery shopping at Target, one of my favorite places to shop. And women were coming up to me saying, "Do you know what you're going to have? Or when's your baby due? Or you don't have much longer." And, you know, having a baby is a beautiful thing. I've devoted my life to working with children, adolescents, and young adults. And even though it hurt my feelings, I went home and I thought, you've got some more work to do, Susan, on your body image. Because I felt compelled, Kevin, to explain, I'm not pregnant. And I'm like, Susan, you don't need to explain to them the process that you're going through. So I would smile and nod and later went home and cried my eyes out. But it forced me to say, do not look to others to validate your self-esteem or your body esteem. You have to do that for yourself, Susan, because you never know what people are going to say about your body. And some people feel comfortable body shaming. These ladies weren't body shaming me. They were trying to celebrate a pregnancy that they thought was happening. So that was a difficult time. But as a result of that, I'd like my legacy to be that I helped other girls and women and men and boys have a better quality of life and have better body esteem, and their self-esteem will soar if that happens.
What led to you to reclaim your confidence?
I think I went through psychotherapy. That helped a lot. I think also coming to the realization that we have a lot of work to do in our society when it comes to body shame. My husband, when I started writing my book, signed me up for all kinds of posts on social media for body shaming. I read every one of them and they break your heart. I'm determined to make a difference where we learn to communicate differently. Instead of, you know, Kevin, it happens on the school bus. It happens in classrooms. It happens at the office Christmas party. It happens at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, where people feel they have the right to say something like, wow, you've put on some weight since last Thanksgiving. That's not okay. We deserve kindness and respect, and we deserve to call people out if they are critical about our body image or our bodies.
Susan, do you think when it comes to, and this may just be an opinion or, you know, observation, when it comes to body image, are women more what's what I'm looking for? Are women more conscious than men are when it comes to body image?
They are, Kevin. I would say I work with a lot of gay, bi, and I've worked with trans in my practice. And Harvard did a study back in, I think it's 2020, and they said more heterosexual men are going to be diagnosed with formal eating disorders in the future because a lot of therapists, if they don't have an expertise in that area, they may not know the right questions to ask when they're doing an assessment.
Okay.
I think body image is an issue for men as well. It seems to, and historically, it's been more gay men. I would see men in my office or boys that had been ridiculed or they had been shamed for being gay or bi. But now I'm seeing more heterosexual men. It's more common with men who are jockeys, men who are on television, on film all the time, journalists. There's a lot of pressure to look thin, to look a certain part. So I think it's definitely more prevalent in the research and in my experience with treating it with women and girls. But I don't want to leave the men out and the boys out because it's an issue for them as well.
And I guess I it's not even a guess. I can see what you're sharing, because if it wasn't the case, then why are these what they call testosterone clinics popping up or something like that? So yeah.
I think it's becoming a bigger issue for men than it ever has been. Do you think so, Kevin? I'm just curious. Do you think it's more prevalent now that they're more concerned about it?
I believe so, Susan. Because as I'm listening to you, last night my wife and I, we went out to eat, right? And of course, you know, we're from two different backgrounds. When I was growing up, like, food was, I'm not gonna say scarce, but it wasn't plentiful either, right? So when I go out to eat, I don't take anything home. I eat everything on my plate, right?
You enjoy it.
She, on the other hand, she's gonna take a box home. And so I don't know if my problem is, do I really enjoy eating, or am I still eating from a level of survival, right?
It may be both. You know, we get the endorphin effect from eating, especially carbohydrates. It elevates our mood. And if you were brought up where there wasn't always ample amount of food and it was scarce, I can see why that would lead you to feel deprived. And probably when you dine out, it's like, whoa, I don't have to worry about being deprived anymore. So it may be both.
I know. So the last part of it, I had a peanut butter pie. And
those are delicious, weren't they?
God,
to die for.
I get home and now I'm feeling the effects of it, right? So I'm laying in the bed and my belly bloated. And I said, I got to stop this. And she goes, you say that all the time. And I said, okay, Kevin, just leave it alone, because y'all gonna end up getting into a disagreement, because we both are looking at each other's bodies, right? And she goes, well, when I met you, you didn't have that stomach. I said, well, okay. And so I'm like, Kevin, leave it alone. Anyway, to your point, yes, I think men are even more conscious of how we look today too. Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful that men feel comfortable talking about it more. I want to say something in regards to what you're saying. One of the first things I do when I work with someone who has morbid obesity, and I've worked with people up to 600 pounds, and if I help them lose like 300 pounds, the first thing I say is, what are your favorite foods? What are non-negotiable? I remember working with a gentleman, and he loved guacamole, chips, and salsa. After about 6 months, he goes, Susan, I've had it with the guac and the chips and the salsa. I'm like, well, let's find something else. He continued to lose weight. Another thing that people aren't aware of when it comes to satiety and fullness, there is what you call cross-communication talk. There's a hormone that's secreted in the stomach when you're eating, and it takes 10 to 15 minutes if you're eating a snack to get a message to the brain that you're comfortably full. When it comes to a meal, Kevin, it's 20 to 30 minutes. And if your tummy doesn't have time to talk to your brain, do the hormonal crosstalk, you're going to exceed satiety and feel uncomfortably full. Like, let's say, go back to your evening, you're dining out with your lovely wife. Probably, maybe eat a little bit slower. No one's going to take that peanut butter pie away from you, but save it and have it later. When you're experiencing a little bit of hunger sensation, no one's going to walk away with that pie. But the slower you eat, the more you will not overeat.
Really?
And once you train your brain, like, I cannot overeat. I've been doing what's known as intuitive eating. There's actually a book and a workbook that we use called Intuitive Eating, 4th edition, that teaches you how it's not telling you to leave out food groups or certain foods. It's teaching you how to eat in alignment with your physiology. And it's brilliant. That's what we teach all of our patients. The other thing is, you don't have to worry about weight gain or weight loss when you're doing intuitive eating. You learn to trust your body, and your body sends you those signals.
Mm.
That may be too much info, but I
No,
thought I'd share that with you.
that's good.
I think that's kind of fascinating.
That's one of my challenges, Susan, is I eat so fast. Now, I could blame it when I used to be in law enforcement because I didn't know if I was going to get a call.
Right.
But I haven't been in law enforcement since 2001, and I'm still doing the same thing.
If you just start, I'm not trying to be your psychotherapist, I'm your buddy, but if you start right now, the hardest is a snack. Because if you have a granola bar, you can polish that off in 3 to 5 minutes, or less. But I would set your clock on your computer or your watch and just start practicing. Over time, you won't be able to exceed satiety. You won't be able to feel stuffed. You'll stop yourself because it's going to feel so uncomfortable. It's a process and it takes time, but you can train yourself to do that.
Okay. Who do you feel is called to serve through your message, Susan?
As I said earlier, Kevin, my legacy is to help as many children and adolescents as I can. That is my favorite age group to work with in my private practice. My husband says I never left adolescents, and that's why I love working with adolescents. He's probably right about that. But Dr. Cooper, who endorsed my book, Dr. Kenneth Cooper from Cooper Aerobic Center, he has a quote that I love. He says, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." And if we think about wellness and prevention, if we can teach children at a very young age to foster self-esteem and body esteem, to have better body image, to teach them not to body shame or accept being body shamed, they will have what I call healthy beginnings, have happy endings. If they learn at an early age those things, that I can't look to other people to say, Kevin, you're a great guy, that I have to do that for myself.
Right.
Over time, that's going to save them a lot of grief and sadness in their lives. The other patient population in the group I want to speak to, when women go through perimenopause and menopause, 90% of them gain weight, Kevin, and it's usually not behavioral. It's more hormonal. I always say to them, make sure your OB-GYN checks your cortisol hormones, which is your stress hormones. And if they're elevated, you tend to have more abdominal fat. You will gain weight in the upper and lower abdomen. And if you get your cortisol hormones tested, you can bring them down and your weight will also come down with that. The other thing, if your estrogen, your hormones are completely off, which they usually are in perimenopause or menopause, if you check your estrogen levels and monitor them throughout that process, you can prevent a weight gain. So in my book, I send you a clear message on how to clear that path for success so that when you do go through those years, you don't have a significant weight gain and have regrets about that.
That's pretty deep.
I was going to say, you're a deep thinker. That's why I think we connected. I like how introspective you are.
Hey. What do you think is one misconception about self-confidence and self-worth?
I think probably the biggest misconception, Kevin, is people think that maybe it comes in a gift box. And Eleanor Roosevelt once said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So if you said to me today, Susan, you've gained a lot of weight since I saw you last. You look fat. That would not faze me because I have positive self-esteem. I don't look to other people to validate my self-esteem or my body. And if you're looking for clothes constantly, you're a shopaholic. If you're using alcohol or you're online too much technology to sedate some of those issues, I think that you cannot derive self-esteem from that. I think that, again, it's something you have to give yourself and work on. Another idea in regards to self-esteem, I often recommend Dr. Nathaniel Branden's book. It's called 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. And just a couple of tips that he brings out is to take responsibility for your life and your behavior. Too many of us want to project blame onto someone else. Take ownership. If you've dropped the ball, apologize. Take responsibility. Have integrity. If you don't have a code of ethics or a moral compass, you're not in alignment with your moral values. And you're going to your self-esteem can't grow from that. I also think not comparing yourself to others. There is some research that talks about we tend to seek out people that have the same level of self-esteem that we have at that time. So let's say you're very young, you're just out of high school, you have low self-esteem, you'll more than likely attract a partner with low self-esteem. But if one of you goes and works on your self-esteem and the other person feels threatened by that and doesn't want to improve theirs, it creates a lot of conflict in your relationship. However, if both parties are willing to boost their self-esteem, work on it,
Right.
it can make for a beautiful marriage and relationship. It can be so empowering.
Wow.
And it's never too late, to build your self-esteem.
That's true. I have to agree with that. If somebody was to read your book, Body Esteem, Piece of Cake, and a Piece of Mind, what's the one breakthrough you want them to walk away with?
I have this dream and this vision, Kevin, that I want to cease body shaming and bullying. And I even have a chapter in my book about that. And we can all participate in that. We can stop that if we make a concerted effort. But I want people to walk away embracing, be your own kind of beautiful. When I was a little girl, my mom said I came out of the womb wearing makeup, wanting to play dress up. I'm a real girly girl. I play the piano, ballroom dance.